So this is my Draw My Life video. I saw a lot of other YouTubers I watched doing it, and since I'm gone on vacation, I felt really guilty, because that is what defines our relationship: love and guilt. I was born in New York, specifically the Bronx, which means, yes, I am a Yankees fan, but to negate, I guess, the badness that goes with that, I'm also a Jets fan. It's also probably the reason I'm such a manic depressive. So many highs and so many lows. I lived there a bit till I was 10 or 11, one of the two, long enough for the Catholicism and Catholic school to leave a lasting impression. The thing that seems to have tied me to other YouTubers who have done this is, shocker, my parents divorced. And so when I was around 10, she moved me to North Carolina, Asheville, North Carolina, land of hippies and old people. My grandfather was an inventor, at least that's what my mom told me. Something about non-slip trays and or wheelchairs. But I never really got to know my grandfather. His lasting impression on me is that he's the first person I ever saw dead. And that was probably one of the first days I discovered something about myself, because while I was in a room filled with crying people, I made myself cry. I did something because everyone else was doing it, even though it wasn't a sincere feeling. Maybe I was even too young to comprehend it. But without my grandfather, there wasn't really much reason for us to be in North Carolina, but my mom stayed there. And the next thing that would leave impressions on me were the boyfriends and the stepfathers. There was John, the abusive alcoholic truck driver, who, you know what, even though he was a terrible person, did teach me how to play chess. And there were others, but there was one person who left me so conflicted throughout my life. This really cool guy that was my mom's boyfriend, and he rode around on a Harley, and he would take me out on the Blue Ridge Parkway. And before this, I had never felt that rush of being on a motorcycle, being out in the world, moving fast. And after we'd chill out at a bar that he owned, and I would play pool and throw darts. The random guys that I look back now and realize, oh my god, those guys were so sketchy teaching me how to play poker. It's around this time that my mom got cancer. But her boyfriend took care of her, he took care of me. Until one day it turned out that the reason he had so much money was he was a drug dealer. And a little while after that, there was a night where I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning because there was a screeching. I had no idea what it was. It sounded kind of like the fire alarm, but there was something different. And it turned out that our house had a carbon monoxide detector. Something luckily that not only my mom and myself had overlooked, but that her boyfriend had overlooked. Because my mom found her boyfriend in the garage running the car, and he had put rags near the bottom of the garage door. And he had a gas mask on, and he was flooding the house with carbon monoxide. It was around that time that my mom sent me to my dad, who she wouldn't have talked to otherwise. And I lived in Florida for several years. During that time, my mom's boyfriend ended up going to jail. It's at this point in my life that I find out that my dad has PKD, polycystic kidney disease. I'll let you Google that on your own. But when I was 16, my dad took me to the doctor, and I found out that I also have PKD. And since the day that I heard those words out of the doctor's mouth, it lit a fire under my ass. It also created a separation of me and everyone else. Like all the other broken misfit toys out there, I realized that I'm not playing by the same rules. My life had an accelerated timeline. No matter what I did in life, I had to do it fast and hard, which sounds a lot cooler than it really is. School flies by, but I move back and forth between my mom every year or every 2 years, so I never really hold on to friends. And because of that, and because of how shy I was and how fat I was, I didn't really have many friends, and when I did have friends, I was kind of their sidekick. And because of that, I would ultimately resent them. Then I met this girl at a call center that I was working at. Back when dial-up was still the thing most people used, if you just got really frustrated, I was the guy you were escalated to. This is where I developed my patience and ultimate hatred of stupid people. But I met this girl and she was so beautiful, but because of that, she made me feel disgusting about myself. Not by anything she would say, but just in comparison. It was something like the rom-com TV show, but it's like the unlikely guy and the hot wife. And because of that, I lost 70 pounds doing Atkins, which was probably the least healthy thing I could have possibly done. But I felt good about myself, and this continued for a really long time until I made the terrible decision to move to college with my girlfriend. This is where I found out the strain put on a relationship when you have zero money. I'd hit this point after several months of living with this person that I just didn't like anymore, that I was like, no, this isn't love, this is distrust and ownership. And I kind of feel like I dodged a bullet on that one, because several days later she would text me that she blew her boss in his car. And for a bit, I hated women. Until I met this girl on the internet, and we had awesome conversations all the time, and we got to know each other over 6 months. And I'd finally reached this point where I was like, I'm done with college, I hate this, I want to do YouTube, I want to, I don't know, intern on some late night talk show. And we decided we'd be roommates in New York together, and I put all my stuff in my car, and I drove up there hopeful and excited, only to find out I had been duped, or as it is known now, catfish. This girl existed somewhere in Kansas. I had already used the money for first month rent and deposit, and I barely made it back home, overdrawing pretty much every card I had in my name for gas. And at this point, I hated life. Not only did I feel like a chump, but I had a mom whose favorite thing to do seemed to be pointing out terrible things about me. And I made a video asking people that watched me if they could give me money so I had enough gas money to get to Florida, to live with my dad, and amazingly, $500 showed up in a PayPal account. And I closed down the donation page, I hopped in my 1996 Geo Prism and drove to my dad's, who accepted me with open arms as long as I went back to college, which I did. not do, but lied to him and said I was going back to college. It was at this time in my life that I decided to focus on making YouTube videos, so I would go to work as a waiter and I'd come back and I'd make videos, and my dad was none the wiser until I got a letter in the mail asking if I was sure I didn't want to go back to school. And my dad kicked me out, as I think that he should have. But the videos are starting to take off. I'm getting ad deals here or there. I get my own apartment. I continue making videos. For a second, my ego takes over and I let a fangirl come to my house, and I'll never do that ever again. But then I meet this other girl, this girl named Lindsay, and she makes this excuse that she always loved Florida and she wanted to go see Maroon 5 there, and we go there together. And I fall in love with this girl, and the day that she leaves, I leave this note in her purse, and it says, "I can't compare how amazing this was to anything else, and I wish that you could stay one day." And it just happened to be that after she went to the airport, her flight was canceled and she got to stay another day. I was so crazy about this girl that I then broke my lease at my current apartment and moved to Atlanta where she lived. This is when I had the biggest ups and downs of my YouTube career. Ad money had stopped coming in as much as I had thought it was, and I lost my apartment. And Lindsay, being the amazing girl that she was, hid me away in the basement of her mom's house. Just one of a number of reasons. She's one of the only people I ever trust and know has my back. And I finally convinced her to move to California with me by tricking her into a road trip. We go all around the country and made sure we had an extra special time in California. Such a good time, in fact, that after we stop in Vancouver, she flies back home, I drive the car back to California, and we move. And I was so happy because I moved, and so did my buddy Shay Carl, and we started a company with him and Kasim G and a few others called Maker Studios. And that was amazing for me until it wasn't, and then I left. It was at this point I realized I really didn't like the business part of YouTube, and that I wanted to focus on working with new creators. So I found this guy, Tony V, and we made Black Box TV together to scare people. And I found Toby Turner, and I loved him so much, I was like, you gotta be the host of my game show called Like Totally Awesome. But sadly, there wasn't enough money to keep it going for the long haul. But I got to create other things with him, like Cute When Fail, and I got excited about YouTube again. I loved working with creative people so much, I created my own clothing company, where I got to work with these up-and-coming and amazing graphic artists to make posters, t-shirts, just stuff that I love. And they were actually getting paid, and it was awesome. And then one day I created a channel called SourceFed because YouTube came up to me and said, "Hey, what would you do with a shit ton of money?" And then asked me after, what would you do if legally you couldn't use the money to buy hookers and jet skis? And I thought for a second and I was like, SourceFed. And over time I found these 6 amazing hosts and friends. And we've been doing that for a year and a half, and I love it as much as day one. And I just want to do more of that, and that's kind of how I live my life now. I need to do what I find interesting and do it with the people I want to see every day, and just create something new, or just take something that has been done and do it better. And I've enjoyed doing it with you guys most all the way. I know there is the core of you, and I've enjoyed doing it for and with you all these years. And it's not gonna feel as special as when Jenna Marbles or someone else said it, because I say it every day. I love your faces. Specifically not because we're finding ourselves together, but we get to do it, and we get to be apart a little bit while we create each other.